This is a review of the Ruark R5 all-in-one unit. It costs £999. And before we go any further, just a quick tangent, just to ask if you do enjoy this review, if you could do me a favour and just click on the like button. It just helps to push this video and my channel onwards and upwards and helps to grow the channel. So if you do enjoy this video and the channel, it would be a great help. But back to the review. Now, like I say, this is an all-in-one unit, and I have been a tad critical of all-in-one units in the past, mainly because they create high frequency noise and they produce lots of vibration, and it affects sonics and sound quality in a negative way. You push all that technology together and what you get is electronic noise leaching from one component to another and masking fine detail. You lose that finesse. So when you're talking about the very best sound you can possibly create from the money you're spending, I always prefer to go for separate external boxes of technology, just to give a bit of physical distance in between each and every task, and as I say, just lowers the noise floor and increases sound quality. Now, as in most things in life, there's never any real black and white. Everything is multiple shades of grey, and it's the same with hi-fi. So I may give all-in-ones the odd criticism here and there, but I do like them. There is a real place for an all-in-one system. There's a real use for an all-in-one unit. Firstly, they give enormous value. You pack a load of technologies in one chassis. You can cut down on the price. You can give an awful lot more value. You can give a whole host of features in one relatively small chassis. Now, that also means that you lower the footprint, because if you had separate external chassis for each of the tasks in an all-in-one, your footprint would be pretty large. You'd have to have quite a lot of desk space or an awful lot more shelf space to accommodate all these external chassis. So an all-in-one reduces the footprint by quite a lot. So you benefit from a lower price point and you benefit from a smaller footprint overall. And then there's things like you don't need all the accessories, the extra cabling and so on, so you lose all that as well. All the installation you'd have to do and setting up and what have you, you don't have to do any of that because everything's connected already. And that's where the Ruark R5 comes in to the picture. It's really one of those boxes that does try and please all the people all the time. It also describes itself rather sweetly, I think, as a high fidelity system, which sounds extraordinarily 70s, but I quite like that. So the R5 supports digital and analog inputs. You've got aptX HD Bluetooth. You've got a host of internet services. There's quite a lot going on in the R5 itself. The basis of the system is a pair of 75mm full range drivers plus 125mm active long throw subwoofer. All that is supported by a 90-watt Class AB amplifier. You can tweak the basic sound with traditional tonal controls such as bass, treble and sub. There's also a loudness control in there, and again that 70s feeling raises its head because tone controls were all the rage back then. There's also a 3D sound option in there. It's an EQ of sorts, and it describes itself as being involving, and it describes itself as being immersive, and who knows really what that means. Well, we'll find out what that means because I'll test it in the sound tests a bit later on. Oh, and one very important feature I have missed is a CD player. There's a CD slot at the front and center of this machine, and there's a dinky little eject button to the right. The CD player itself supports the usual audio and also data formats, and there's CD tech supported in there too when available. Wireless play can be had from DNLA and network attached storage devices. The R5 can also be set up as part of a multi-room system with up to 7 other units in the home. They don't have to be R5 models either. You can mix and match Ruark kit here. Now, this being a Ruark unit, it's no surprise that radio is included too. three flavors of radio. In this case, you get FM, DAB, and DAB+, depending where you are, and in addition to that, internet radio too. There are 30 presets available, 10 presets for each radio type. When you're in the internet radio section, if you go to say BBC Radio 4 as an example, then within the BBC Radio 4 selection, in the menu option, you will see podcasts for that particular radio station, which is quite nice. In broad terms, podcasts from any source can also be searched via genre, location, search and more. Station information along with any other readable notice can be examined via the front OLED display and can be altered for brightness. This screen is easily read, remaining legible at a distance of several feet. On the rear is a phono amplifier for turntable attachment and optical port, analog inputs, RCA outs and a USB charge playback port. There's Ethernet, which will be handy for internet radio and music services of course, while the 3.5mm headphone socket can be found at the front of the chassis. Finished in grey or walnut, the unit can be controlled by a very nice rotodial that sits at the top of the chassis. Now the rotodial is a very Ruark thing. You'll see one, as I say, at the top of the R5's chassis, but there's a duplicate unit, as it were, which serves as a remote control. So you can hold one of these little circular UFO looking type objects in your hand and you can use that as a remote control. The rotodial remote is run off a button battery and it's a very personal thing. Some people will dislike the rotodial, they'll prefer the usual sort of rectangular brick remote. I actually thought it was nice, it was very stylish, it's very compact, all the buttons are within easy reach, you don't have to go hunting for the service you need, everything is there in a very circular fashion of course, but I found it very easy to use and very easy to navigate as well. The rotodial features a rotary dial that can be pressed in to select. CD type transport buttons are included too, as well as a back button, menu, source and preset. All the essentials are here. There are useful system tweaks included with the R5, including the ability to change the quality of any streaming music. This is really good if your broadband link is not the strongest. When you switch on, you'll be presented with a very useful wizard which takes you through the setup routine of the R5, and there's also extra little setup routines such as pairing the remote control to the main chassis, and the little remote incidentally does not need a line of sight in operation. So this is very useful if you're sitting and listening to music in a relatively busy listening room and you can't see your R5, maybe it's hidden behind some chair or something, but you'll be able to operate the R5 with your remote control, like I say, because you don't need to see the R5 to actually operate it. Spanning 142mm by 520 by 300mm, the R5 weighs in at a healthy 9.5 kilograms. Now, to begin sound tests, I took a rather left field view and decided to begin the sound tests by plugging in a turntable in the rear into the phono amp at the rear, and I grabbed a Rega Planar 1 to do that very thing, and I played a mixture of rock and jazz. And what I did to begin with, I tested it as if it was a piece of hi-fi, a piece of very expensive hi-fi. So I put it in my large listening room, I put it on a proper hi-fi stack, I had it positioned in front of my chair as if I was listening to a new pair of speakers, and I tested it with the turntable just to see how it performed as a piece of hi-fi. Now, positioned in that way, I'd say the output, well, it wasn't really shy at all. Now yes, if you did push the sound very hard and you really forced that gain to the heights, then for a luggable unit like this, there was a hint of strain. But if you pulled back a bit and listened to the R5 at normal listening levels, the general output was, I would say, on the warm side of neutral, even though there was plenty of information there. And then I just got this itch at the back of my neck, and I thought, I wonder if everything is set up properly here. I'd just turned this thing on, warmed it up and started to listen. So I decided to have a look in the settings. It was then I realised that the loudness button was defaulted to on. So I turned it off, and immediately the sound from the R5 was pulled back to a far more neutral and balanced output. And while I was there, I also noticed that this 3D option I mentioned earlier on, that was also turned on. So I turned it off. But the result of that was not particularly great, because the soundstage, when you turn the 3D EQ off, the soundstage shrunk to almost nothing. It wasn't particularly pleasant. So I turned the 3D option back on again. You really need to turn the 3D option on. You really need to give the soundstage some space and air for the music to come at you. You turn that 3D off and you're listening to it through, well, it's like listening to music through a camera lens. Similarly, as much as I despise tone controls generally, there actually is a place for the loudness control with the R5, especially in rock. But if you're listening to classical and jazz, well, maybe opinions may differ. I would have the 3D option set to on. Some will prefer the 3D option off to enhance focus, and I can see that too. I would have loudness off myself to enhance accuracy and precision from these particular genres, but have a listen yourself. It's one of those personal decisions, I think, but an A/B comparison is very simple and easy to perform. In short, both of these options are useful additions to your sonic armoury, especially for a lifestyle product like this. Good to experiment with. Addressing the phono amplifier specifically, cymbal splashes were rolled off, brass was restricted in terms of dynamic reach, and the soundstage was naturally a little restricted. Yet bass was firm, punchy and powerful, while the mid-range remained admirable in terms of detail extraction. So I point my finger directly at the internal phono amplifier for some of the sonic issues I was hearing from the turntable. Now, an external model would be an awful lot better. It will improve the quality of the sound, and it'll help you if you do decide to hook up a turntable to the R5. For now, if you haven't got the budget, if you spent all your money buying the R5 in the first place, then you're fine. You can cope, everything will be alright for a while, and you can get by with the internal phono amplifier. When you do have the budget, grab yourself something like a Project Moving Magnet phono amplifier, which you can grab from Amazon from somewhere around £65, and that will improve matters no end. Turning to DAB, I listened to BBC Six Music, and within the restrictions of the inherent DAB technology, and DAB is a pretty poor radio carrier format, I have to say, I was pleased with the sonic output, at least in relative terms anyway. Again, I preferred the 3D and loudness options on here. I think radio particularly suits a warming effect, especially on DAB and from high energy music. Listening to BBC Radio 3 via the superior internet radio and a selection of choral music, I turned loudness to off to enhance air and space around the mid-range. And while 3D as off enhanced accuracy, turning the 3D back to on produced a sense of grandeur that impressed. Again, personal taste will weigh heavily here. FM radio performance was okay. The performance wasn't the best because the reception wasn't the best for my particular location with this particular unit. But in terms of sound quality, the actual performance was better than DAB radio. I then played a selection of the Pet Shop Boys ditties via Bluetooth and Qobuz. 3D was set to on and loudness set to off, and found the presentation open, airy and informative within the mid-range. Bass was focused and punchy. Frequencies were well disciplined. I didn't experience any noticeable blooming bass or barking mids, while there was enough reverb spinning off treble to add to the airy nature of the music. I then played Great Big Boy from Leo Kottke on CD, vocals and guitar picking with occasional percussion. CD proved to be the best sounding source thus far in this test, offering a nice sense of accuracy around the vocal diction with tight, focused rimshot percussion. I was also impressed with a few singer-songwriter 16-bit 44.1 kHz sound files played from USB, and accessible via the music player source option on the R5. The sense of clarity was obvious here, along with the air infusing the midband. Now, when I was a nipper, way back then, the family used to have an old radio. It was made by Grundig, the German company, and that particular unit was a low, long unit with a fabric grille on the front. It resembled the R5, so there was a little bit of this nostalgic thing for me anyway. But even if you haven't experienced the wonders of an old 70s Grundig radio, when you look at the Ruark R5 now, it does have a slightly nostalgic air about it. It gives you a warm feeling, even just to look at the thing, and that's nice. So it has that nostalgic design, and I quite approve of that. And when you have those EQs on that I mentioned, loudness on, and the 3D option on, you do get that slight warmth when you're listening to DAB radio, for example, and it gives you that sort of 70s almost vintage Valve-esque glow, which is very nice indeed. Now, when you turn the loudness off and you've got the 3D option on, it does give you a more modern sound. The clarity improves, the focus improves, and it sounds very much more like a modern lifestyle piece of hi-fi. There's a neutrality, there's a balance, and bass performs very well in and around that tone. The Ruark R5 is not really an audiophile product, not strictly speaking. It serves a lifestyle audience, but it does so with a high degree of style and efficiency. So this thing is rather stylish, it fits in with any decor, it's easy to set up, and it packs in a whole host of features. And even though it's priced at $999, I would say overall it offers great value for money. For me, I liked it a lot, and it's welcome back in my home at any time. And that's me done. Thank you very much for joining me. Until the next time, I'll hopefully see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.